Cool. All right then. So, as I was just saying, this week's Wednesday workshop, I'm going to be talking about correct form and some tips on how to improve your form on various foundational exercises. So, particularly big lifts, deadlifts,
Mhm.
squats, bench press. Might touch a little bit on some bent over rows. Also, want to look at push-ups because push-ups are an exercise that I know for many of you, although they may not be in your program, they are something that many of you are trying to either improve or maybe even you're trying to get your first push up on your toes. So I'll have a little look at that as well. But I'm going to start with some of the big barbell lifts because those are the ones that have the greatest capacity not only to make a difference to your fitness and your strength, but also they have the greatest risk of injury if you're not doing them correctly. So we're going to have a look at deadlifts. We're going to have a look at squats and front squats. We're also going to have a look at Bulgarian split squats, which are not so much of a big sort of dangerous move in terms of you're not going to be hitting as much load, but they are a very, very challenging exercise. And they've been especially requested by Windy. And we're also going to have a look then at some push-ups a little bit later. All right, so I'm just going to switch cameras over to this one. Cool. So I've got my barbell already set up. I'm probably going to do these without any load on the bar. Just check that my microphone is connected as well. Yeah, cool. So I'm probably going to do all of this without any load on the bar, just so that the plates don't kind of get in the way of what I'm trying to show you, except for the deadlifts where I will put some load on the bar. So whilst the bar is already unloaded, we're going to have a look at squats. So first of all, you're going to want to make sure that when you are squatting from a rack, that you have the bar set up at the right height. So generally, that wants to be kind of in line with your armpit crease. Um, so if you need to change the height of the hooks, they're sort of different on each rack, but generally it's going to be a case of like pivoting it out away and then sliding the pin out. So it's going to be different on whatever rack you use, but that's the general kind of rule of thumb. So make sure you get the J hooks at the right height. And then you may also want to set up some spotter bars. Now, on this particular rack, we haven't got spotter bars, but they're the ones that kind of stick out about a meter. And you want to set them low enough that when you get to the bottom of your squat, you don't hit those spotter bars. I see a lot of people putting it at a height where the bar hits the spotter bars before they've hit full depth. You basically just want the bar low enough that if you do get to the bottom of your squat and you can't get back up again, you want to just be able to kind of like flop forward and leave the bar on the spotter bars and then get out. All right. So the only time the bar should ever hit those spotter bars is if you need to bail. You shouldn't be hitting them at any other point. Obviously, on this rack, we haven't got the spotter bars. We have got these kind of spot straps, which I'm not going to be using today. But you will find some racks the spotter bars kind of go in between the two racks. So same thing. All right. Once you've got the J hook set up around about armpit height for a back squat, you are then going to face inwards towards the rack so that when you then want to finish your set, you can walk forwards into it. What you don't want to do is walk away from the rack like that. And then when you finish your set and you're fatigued, you don't want to be trying to find those hooks backwards. All right. So you always want to be facing the J hooks, regardless of where the mirror is or anything like that. Face the rack. Okay. So we step underneath the bar, and you want to make sure that you are central on the bar, not central in the rack, because you might have put the bar slightly off to one side. It might be over this way, or it might be over that way. It doesn't matter how central you are in the rack. It matters how central you are on the bar. And that's always easy to find by just looking at what the knurling looks like. So you can see you've got a shiny part in the middle of the bar, and then you've got the knurled parts, which are nice and grippy. And so that should give you an idea when you look at your hand placement on the knurling, you can tell if you're holding it in the middle. Some bars might also have a little bit of knurling in the middle to show you where that middle part is as well. All right, so coming back to the rack, make sure you're holding the bar around about shoulder width apart and equal in the middle, stepping under, and we step up and just take one step back. You don't need to be going halfway across the gym, all right? You're not going to be hitting the rack because we're going to be going straight up and down, not forwards and back. So eyes and chest want to be up on a squat, and your feet want to be about hip width apart. We don't want to be out here unless we're doing a sumo squat, and we don't want to have our feet too narrow unless we're doing a cyclist squat. So for a normal squat, it's going to be around about shoulder width apart. A little trick for this, by the way, is if you're not sure where your feet should be, just take a little jump. And generally, where your feet land naturally, that's going to be around about where you want to have your feet. It's going to be different for different people. Some people it's going to be a bit wider, some people it's going to be a little bit narrower, but generally take a jump and where your feet land naturally, that's going to be around about the right width. Okay, so we've stepped back from the rack. Eyes and chest want to be up, and I want you to think about driving your elbows down towards your back pockets, all right? I'll show you what that looks like from behind. So rather than being out here, I want you to drive the elbows down as if you're trying to squeeze lemons underneath your armpits. That's going to engage your lats. And when you engage your lats, it's going to help you keep your back flat and upright. Then eyes and chest up, squeezing your elbows down towards your back pockets, engaging your lats. And we push the bum back, all right? So the bum goes back as the knees bend. And we're coming down, 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 keeping that chest up, eyes up. We don't want to be flopping down like this. We want to stay tall. And then driving into the heels and pushing up. Common mistakes that I see on the squat is firstly, not engaging in the lats. So the back is then loose. And so then as you squat, you end up rounding like this. We don't want to be there. We want to be here. So we want to keep that nice engaged back, which you do by squeezing those lemons under your armpits, not going loose and floppy. All right. And then the other thing that I see often going wrong, which I'm going to show you from the front, is what we call knocking knees, or correctly called knee valgus. So when you get to the bottom of your squat and then you drive up out of the squat, I see a lot of people doing this with their knees. Now, this is to do with weakness in the outer glute muscles, your glute medius and glute minimus. And that's allowing the legs to collapse inwards. See the weakness here, or it's just that you're not engaging them? So a couple of really easy ways to engage those muscles is firstly, imagine that you're stood on a piece of paper and trying to tear that paper by sort of driving your feet outwards. Now, we're not actually going to turn our feet, but I want you to imagine you're stood on that piece of paper and you're trying to trying to tear it. So we're pushing towards our pinky toes, and notice what happens with my knees as soon as I do that. See how my knees want to drive out towards my pinky toes. And that way, then, as you drive out the squat, those knees stay pushed towards the pinky toes rather than collapsing inwards like that. Another thing that you can do to help you with that engagement is using a booty band. Where did I put it? Can't remember where I put it down now. I'm going to use this instead. Oh, there it is. Okay, so using a mini band or a booty band, and you place it around your knees. And that way you have something to resist against. So as you do your squat, you're trying to stretch that band. So as you come back up, you're driving the knees outwards. If you don't want to use a booty band or you haven't got one, that's fine. You can still apply the same logic that as you drive out the squat, you push your knees towards your pinky toes. All right, so common things I see is that rounding of the back and that collapsing inwards of the knees. So those are the two things that I want you to really think about. And then the third, probably most common issue that I see out of all of them is just not going deep enough in your squat. As I always say, range makes the change. I would prefer that you went a bit lighter with your squat, but got deeper. There's no point loading this bar up with 200 kilos and then getting underneath that bar and just squatting to here, all right? You're wasting your time. You might as well go half the weight and go all the way to the very bottom of your squat. Like I say, range makes the change. So right to the bottom and then driving out. At the very least, you should be getting to what we call parallel. Parallel is where, putting the bar back over. Parallel is where your thighs are parallel with the floor. So we're not up here, we're here. Hips and knees should be in line. That's what we would call a parallel squat, and that is the very minimum that I want from your squat. But at best, but preferably, I want you to get past parallel and go to what we call full depth. Again, this is probably the biggest mistake I see is people just not going deep enough in their squats. Now, getting this deep in a squat can be difficult for people who don't have very good ankle mobility. We talked about this a little bit today, talking about we were talking about tight calf muscles. So come a little bit lower with that. Now, if you are tight in your calf muscles, these ones here, because the calf muscles restrict dorsiflexion, if you are tight here, you're not going to be able to get your knees far enough forward. And if you can't get your knees far enough forward, you're not going to be able to get all the way to the bottom of your squat. Because as you can see here, in order to get right to the bottom, my knees are all the way over the front of my toes. If you can't get that deep, what you end up having to do is lean your body more. And it becomes more and more challenging because if you're not able to get your knees forwards, you have to bring your body forward to compensate. So notice how bringing my knees forward allows me to stay upright with my body. Bringing my knees back forces me to come forwards with my body. So here's a couple of things you can do if you find you are not able to get that range of motion in the ankle because you have tight calf muscles. Number one, before you start your squats, always mobilize your ankles first. So number one, get your toes up against a fixed surface like this and then push inwards, and you should feel a nice stretch all the way here. Notice how I'm doing this with a straight knee. I've got my knee locked out and I'm pulling myself inwards. That allows you to get into this top muscle here. This one, if I just flex here, this muscle here is called your gastrocnemius. That is your top calf muscle. And because this muscle goes all the way above the knee and then all the way down to the ankle or all the way down to the heel, to stretch that one, you have to keep a straight knee because it crosses the knee joint, and you have to dorsiflex your foot. So that way we're stretching from here all the way through that gastrocnemius down to the heel. Now there's another muscle in here called the soleus or soleus, which is this one here, which sits a lot deeper. And this one doesn't cross the knee joint. This one starts kind of on the back of this shin bone. So in order to get that soleus muscle there, we have to do it with a bent knee. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get the knee up against a fixed object, but we're going to bend the knee and push inwards. And now I can feel this stretch right down the bottom here in the soleus. So we've got the straight leg version for the gastrocnemius, and we've got the bent knee version for the soleus. And you need to be doing both. You need to be holding it for around 30 seconds or more. Another couple of stretches that I love for hitting my calves is just getting into a kind of like down dog position, a really ugly down dog. Again, doing it with a straight leg for the gastroc, and then doing it with a bent leg for the soleus. And you can just do this, stretch here, hold for 10 to 30 seconds, stretch here, hold to 10 to 30 seconds. And as I say, you should be hitting both of those stretches before you start your squats. I would recommend do a little warm up first. So walk uphill on a treadmill or get on the Stairmaster. And once you've warmed up, then hit those stretches and then hit the squats. Cool. That's everything you need to know, I think, about back squats. But we're not done with squats yet because I want to talk about front squats as well. Now, front squats, actually, I'm going to go back a little bit. Before we talk about front squats, I also want to talk about a couple of little tricks that you can do if you're still struggling with that ankle mobility. You've probably heard of this one before, but if you get yourself a couple of plates, a couple of little plates like this, ideally ones that don't have kind of holes and lumps and stuff on them. If you can get flat plates, even better. But a couple of little plates like this, and you can stick them underneath your heels. And then that means when you get all the way to the bottom, your knees aren't having, or your ankles aren't having to dorsiflex quite as much because the heels are elevated. So that can be a good hack, but it is not a substitute. It's not a substitute for just improving your ankle mobility. All right, this is kind of a little hack that you can use just to get you squatting, but then you should be working on your ankle mobility as well. Okay, let's move on to front squats. So front squats are more challenging for most people because they require more mobility in other parts of your body. So whilst back squats require a lot of mobility in your ankles, front squats require more mobility in other joints. But they do require less mobility in your ankles. So if you are struggling with that ankle mobility, this is a good way to kind of help with that, but you are going to need more mobility in other areas. So first of all, for a front squat, We are coming, let me turn around here. For a front squat, we are coming to the bar this side. Let me just turn that a little bit more. Hopefully you can see this. Just gonna move the screen around as well. Okay, so we're coming to this side of the bar instead. But the important thing to know with a front squat is that it is not your hands holding the bar, it's actually your shoulders. So, in theory, if you were to take your hands away, the bar should stay there. All right, so it is your shoulders holding the bar, not your hands. Now, in order to achieve that, you're going to have to get your elbows really, really high. Let me see if we can just bring that back around a little bit more. By the way, Windy, are you still on the call? Maybe not. Maybe I'm all on my own now.
Yes, I am.
All right, good stuff.
Right.
Cool.
Just folding clothes.
Yeah, no worries. If you have any questions at any point, just unmute yourself, all right? So for front squats, like I say, it is your shoulders holding the bar, not your hands. So you're going to have to get your elbows really, really high because look what happens. If I take my hands away, the bar stays on my shoulders, but as soon as my elbows start to drop, the bar's going to drop as well. All right, so in order to get that bar sitting on your shoulders, you have got to have elbows high, which means you have to have your wrists pretty far bent back. Let me just see if I can turn that sideways so that you can see. You see how my wrists are bent right back on themselves. So that is the first area that you're going to need really good mobility is in your wrists. So stretches that you can do for your wrist mobility are things like going down on the floor, you can see that, is just leaning into it like this. So leaning into your wrist forwards and also leaning into your wrist backwards. And this should stretch all the way down through the front part of your arm. A lot of people have tight forearms because they spend a lot of time at their computers typing away or on their smartphones typing away, and all these muscles here get quite tight. Also rock climbers have very tight muscles here. So you need to be stretching them out before you start your front squats. Otherwise, just like with your back squats, that tightness is going to end up affecting your ability to perform the move correctly. Let me bring that camera back around to the side now. Cool. All right. Cool. All right. So for the front squat, as I mentioned, you're going to get your elbows really nice and high, and then just like the back squat, we don't push the knees forwards, we push the bum back. So elbows stay high, eyes and chest stay up, and the elbows. The important thing with this is the elbows have to stay up. So I want you to think about when you drive out of the front squat. I want you to think about driving the elbows up first. All right. So we don't push through the legs first because the elbows are going to drop. As soon as you start thinking about pushing the legs first, elbows end up pointing down. So think about elbows pushing towards the ceiling. All right, so I'll just show you that again. Elbows stay up, eyes and chest stay up, bum goes back, sitting all the way to the bottom of your squat, and then drive the elbows up. A lot of people find front squats quite uncomfortable because of that wrist mobility. So a couple of options if front squats come up in your programming and you just cannot get past the wrist pain. Firstly, persevere. All right, it does get easier, I promise you. So persevere. The second thing you can do if you need to get past, if you can't get past that pain, is to switch to a cross body grip instead, which looks like this. Okay, so that way it is still the shoulders holding the bar. Again, if I take my hands away, the bar stays there, but the hands are just there so that if you do drop forwards a bit, the hands can kind of stop the bar rolling. Okay, so elbows stay high, chest and eyes stay up. We sit all the way to the bottom and we drive the elbows up as we push down through our feet. And then another option is the zombie squat, which is a good way to keep in mind about keeping the elbows up. Because with the zombie squat, if you do drop your arms, the bar is going to roll off. So with a zombie squat, got to keep those arms up and then sitting down to the bottom and then keeping up. All right. When you are holding in a true front rack position, which is this one, you don't have to have, let me see if I can come closer to the camera for this. You don't have to have all your fingers on the bar. And you certainly don't want to be gripping the bar like this. You don't want to wrap your hand around. You can just have the fingers on the bar like this. And you could even just come to the point where it's just a couple of fingers like this on the bar. That's fine, because I say it's the shoulders taking the weight, not the hands. All right. It just means that then if you do need to get your hands back on the bar, it becomes a lot harder. So ideally get to the point where you can keep all fingers underneath the bar. All right. Before I move on, Windy, I know you're the only person on the call right now. Any questions about back squats or front squats? I know that you're busy folding clothes right now as well, but
It's okay. um, well, my squats. I've always
yes.
been flexible, even if I have tight calf muscles. I still can do it, but
Right.
I wonder how low is actually good. I think I tend to wonder, am I collapsing too much? I also have a massive belly.
Well, when you say collapsing, collapsing where?
Not flat, but I am able to do the Asian squat, for example, like you did.
Nice. Yep. So all the way to the bottom here.
Where yes, even lower I can. Now, how low should I go before I go back up? And how long should I stay low?
So in terms of how low should you go, as I always say, range makes a change. So you should go to your full range of motion. So for you, that means all the way into, as you put it, an Asian squat. So for me, I always squat to full depth unless I'm trying to train some other element of squat. So sometimes I might train paused squats where I might go to here, hold it for a couple of seconds, and then drive, so that I'm practicing holding time under tension. Because when you get to the very bottom, you do lose tension. You know, at this point, I'm not under tension. I'm sort of relaxing at this point. So, so the only time I wouldn't go to full depth is if I want to practice holding tension throughout the whole movement, and then I might go to parallel and then back up without hitting full depth. But 99 times out of 100, I just hit full depth and then push straight back out again. In terms of how long you should stay at the bottom of your squat, again, sort of depends what stimulus you're trying to train. Generally, if you're trying to build strength and mobility all at the same time, which is what I try and program for, I would just say go full depth and then back up again. But if I'm ever programming for time under tension, then you might want to hold 2 or 3 seconds. So you might come to parallel rather than full depth, hold it for a pause, and then come back up again. But it really depends on the programming. And if I want you to hold a pause, then I would put it in the programming. It would be a paused squat or a paused front squat. Does that answer your question?
Yes. One more thing with barbell, and sometimes I do without barbell as well. Do you prefer one to the other, or again, depending on what we're training for?
In terms of what piece of equipment to use?
With my dumbbells, with the double.
Sure.
Dumbbells.
Okay. So I'll give you a walkthrough on
I
dumbbell
don't go to
squats.
the gym, you see. Yeah, I don't go to the gym, so I don't have these bars.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So barbell squats, the nice thing about barbell squat is in general, it's going to allow you to do the heaviest version because you're spreading the load through your back. Whereas when you use dumbbell squats, you're going to be limited by how much you can hold in your hands. So whilst you might be able to squat, you know, I can squat around 100 kilos in a barbell squat. In order to do 100 kilos with dumbbells, I'd have to hold 50 kilos in each hand, which is very, very challenging. So dumbbells somewhat limit the amount that you can squat purely because you're limited by your grip strength. But various different dumbbell versions. So you can have the dumbbell front rack squat, where you rack the dumbbells up on your shoulders. And this is generally going to allow you to do the most amount of weight because some of the load is going through your shoulders. So with this one, again, elbows stay nice and high, chest and eyes stay up as if you're trying to look at the top corner of the room, and then bum goes back, and same thing here, right? So very similar to the barbell squat. It's just some of the weights through your hands and some of the weights through your shoulders. Another version might be a dumbbell back squat. For dumbbell back squat, you're typically going to be using one dumbbell loaded across your back like this. And same thing, eyes and chest up like this. Now, this is going to feel easier because for a start, you're not having to take any of the load with your hands. And secondly,
Yes.
chances are you're going to be using less load overall because the amount of weight that you can get in one dumbbell is probably going to be less than the amount of weight you can get in two dumbbells. And then the third, probably most common one would be a dumbbell goblet squat, where you hold the dumbbell from here, and then very similar to a front squat. And this one, again, allows you to keep a more upright chest. So you're less likely to struggle with ankle mobility. You also get sometimes called a dumbbell suitcase squat, where you keep your eyes and chest up, but you hold the weights by your side, and then you sit into a squat. But this is very much moving into deadlift territory. All right, so there's not a huge amount of
That's tough
difference.
for me. That's
Say
tough
again?
for me because that is a bit tougher, the last
Yep.
one, because I do have to spread my knees out because of my belly. So
Okay.
if I were to do the suitcase, it will just knock my knee around.
Yeah.
So that never works out for me anyway.
Yeah, I would say if you're using dumbbells, easiest version is going to be either a goblet squat with one dumbbell here or a back squat with
Mm-hmm.
it on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, you want to get to the point of doing front racked dumbbell squat, which is that one. All right.
Yeah.
It's going to allow you to carry more load. It is just a bit more challenging because some of the weight is staying in your
Yeah.
in your hands like this. And then if you want to get really advanced, don't even know if I'm going to be able to do this, but this is a really good one for improving your mobility. And that is an overhead squat where you hold the weights overhead. And again, all right,
Yeah.
very challenging version, but I would encourage you to give it a go sometime because it's fantastic for your mobility. One thing I didn't talk about with front squats is there you need to keep a much more upright position, and therefore it requires good thoracic mobility, which is your back. All right. So in order to
Yes.
be able to keep your chest upright when your elbows are up, we have to have really good thoracic mobility. Otherwise, we end up like this. All right. So if you
Mhm.
struggle with this, not only do you need to improve your wrist mobility, but you also need to improve your thoracic, which you can do with things like cat cows, where you go here and here. So this is cat cow. You can also do it with rotational movements, threading the needle.
Mhm.
All right. So have a look at that thoracic mobility if you struggle to hold that position. And if you do struggle to hold that position, you're probably going to struggle even more with the overhead squat because then we're looking at shoulder mobility as well. All right. Does that all make sense?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. Good stuff. Right. Let's have a look at deadlifts. So moving into deadlifts. Now, the important thing with a deadlift is that whilst the squat is a hip and knee dominant move. So with a squat, the knees bend and the hips bend. So we're bending at this joint and we're bending at this joint. With a deadlift, it's predominantly hips. So we want to be hinging. It's what we call a hinge movement rather than a squat movement. Okay, so notice how the knees are only just bending, but the hips are flexing as much as possible.
Yeah.
And that puts way more focus on the bum, whereas squats put more focus on the quads. So squats are good for quads, deadlifts are good for glutes and hamstrings. So that's posterior chain. So any questions before I go on, by the way, Wendy?
I'm good. Okay. Thank
Cool.
you.
That's right. Cool. So for deadlifts, first things first, I want you to start your deadlift by loading up bumper plates, not your classic sort of gym plates. So you know these ones that I was holding up before. So these grip plates, the ones that have handles, as you can see, they come in all different diameters. So like a 5 kilo is a different size from a 10 is a different size from 15 and 20, etc. Whereas with bumper plates, it doesn't matter if you have a 5, just grabbing one here to show you. With bumper plates, it doesn't matter if you have a 5, a 10, or 20, these all have the same diameter. So this is 5, this is 10, this is 20. They also tend to have standardized colors. So the standard colors are green for 10, yellow for 15, blue for 20, and red for 25. So make sure you're using bumper plates so that the bar is at the right height. Then I want you to step all the way up. Move this bit. When you step all the way up to the bar until your shins are touching the bar. Where a lot of people go wrong is they're too far back. And then that means when they want to do the deadlift, typically it means they start with a rounded back. And secondly, it means when they start to lift, the bar swings in towards them. We don't want that. So you want to have your shins right up against the bar. Let me see if I can just shift that around a little bit. Okay. So shins right up against the bar. And then push the bum back. Now, my favorite cue for this, because a lot of people, when they try and push the bum back, they go like that. My favorite cue for this is to imagine that you've got a torch stuck up your bum. So like a flashlight for my American friends. Imagine you've got a torch or a flashlight stuck up your bum and you're trying to shine it at the wall behind you. Notice how my back goes from here. Imagine how my back goes from here and the torch is shining down at the floor to here as I'm trying to shine it at the wall behind me. So keep that nice flat back and you'll feel immediately all these muscles in your back start to switch on and tighten up. All right. So imagining you have that torch in your back, shins up against the bar. Before you even start your set, I want you to start getting those cues in place, because what a lot of people do is they treat the first part of their lift as if it's not part of the lift. So they will pick up the bar like this, they'll pick it up with horrible form, and then they'll think, right, now I'm going to start. Too late, you already started, you just weren't thinking about it. So I want you to start the moment your shins are touching the bar. Now we are starting the lift. So the bum goes back, the torch is up your bum, shining at the wall behind you, and then hands go on the bar. And I want you to once again imagine that you are trying to squeeze lemons under your armpits. So we're turning on those muscles in your back, squeezing like this. The other way you can think about it is imagine you're trying to bend the bar around you so that we're engaging those back muscles. Shins against the bar, torch up your bum, shining at the wall behind you, squeeze the lemons under your armpits, and then we're going to think about pushing the floor down. So rather than thinking about pulling the bar up, we think about pushing the bar down and squeezing your glutes. Something that once we get to the top, what a lot of people do wrong is they then lean backwards like this. We're not trying to push the bar forwards with our hips. We're trying to stand up. So we're squeezing the glutes and we're standing tall and squeezing the shoulders back. So squeeze the shoulders. And then to reverse the movement, to go back to the start, we push the hips back and we slide the bar down the shins so that the bar stays in contact with our legs the whole time. From the bottom all the way to the top, the bar is touching our legs. That is what we call a conventional deadlift, all right, where we start from the bottom and finish at the top. For a Romanian deadlift, we start from the top. So once again, we're going to get in position, lift the bar, and then from the top, we go down, ideally touch the floor, but if you can't go all the way to the floor, that's fine. We'll just go to the mid shin and we finish at the top. So it's from top to the top again. Conventional deadlift, we start from the floor and we go from the floor to the top and back to the floor. The other subtle difference, which I didn't really show when I demoed it first, is with a conventional deadlift, we actually drop the hips slightly. So we're here with a slightly stronger position because the quads are engaged as well. So hips are slightly lower and we drive from there. So with a conventional deadlift, hips are a bit lower. With a Romanian deadlift, hips are high and the back is flat. Any questions there, Wendy?
I might ask you later when I start joining the gym and actually do it.
No problem. All the same things apply.
Right now, okay.
All the
I'm
same things
still
apply with
manifesting.
dumbbells. Yeah, that's cool.
Yes,
By the way, did I start this recording? I don't know if I did. Yes, I did. Um,
you did. You
yeah,
did.
cool. Just before you say anything that you don't want on the recording. Um, so,
Um,
so same thing with dumbbells. Again, obviously with this, you're probably not going to go all the way to the floor because the dumbbells are smaller. But same thing
mhm.
applies. Hips go back, dumbbells stay in contact with the legs, and we come to about here, and then we come back up again. With a
Okay.
squat, I mentioned about keeping your eyes and chest up. With a deadlift,
Yeah.
it's the opposite. We want to keep the eyes down as the chest goes down. So when we're here, we're looking at the floor. When we're up, we're looking at the wall. Whereas with a squat, we stay up the whole time. All right.
With this one, your shin basically keeps straight up always.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a little bit different with
Yeah.
a conventional deadlift.
Yeah.
The knees are going to come forward a bit. All right, because
Yeah.
we
You
come to
have
here.
to.
But with a
Yeah.
Romanian deadlift, the shins stay pretty vertical. So that's a Romanian deadlift. That's a
Mm-hmm.
conventional deadlift.
Mm-hmm. I think I
Cool.
can only do Romanian anyway. I
Okay.
don't have a bar, so
Yeah, I mean
awesome.
you can still do conventional deadlift with dumbbells. It's just you're here rather
On
than
the side.
here. Okay.
Okay.
But I know what you were saying earlier about your tummy being in the way, so that's fine.
Oh, one question actually. What do I do with my abdominal muscle when I do these two,
Great
the
question.
squats?
Great question. I'm so glad that I've got you on the call because these are the things I always
Mhm.
forget about. So, whenever you do a squat in particular, but also when you do a deadlift, I want to talk about something called intra-abdominal pressure, which basically means the pressure inside your abdomen. If you think about a balloon, I haven't got a balloon to show you, unfortunately, but if you think about a balloon, the more you blow it up and the more pressure that you put into that balloon, what happens to it as you put more pressure into the balloon? Does it get harder or softer?
Harder, yeah.
It gets harder, right? The more pressure that's inside that balloon, the harder it gets. Same as if you think about tires on your car. Put more pressure in, it gets harder, it gets firmer, it gets more resilient. It doesn't bend and twist. Think of your
Mhm.
abdomen in the same way. As you take in a deep breath and you hold it, you create all this pressure inside your abdomen that gives your body rigidity. That's really important when you start lifting heavy loads because all you have from this part of your body, from your rib cage to this part where your hips,
Mm.
where your pelvis is, here to here, you
Yeah.
just have your spinal column, which is like this thick, right? So you've just got
Mhm.
your spine running from here to here, is taking
Yeah.
all of that load. Everything here is squishy. So you're trying to put all that load through just your spinal column like that, and then all this squishy stuff. So the more pressure you can create in your abdomen, the more it's going to give rigidity to your spine or take load off your spine and give rigidity to your torso. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is that a full blown, no, not full blown, full intake of breath or
Yeah.
half or
Yeah, exactly.
full?
So
Okay.
I would always think
Full
of
then.
this as taking
The
the
blue.
deepest breath you can. And then I talk about it as going underwater. So imagine you're about to dive to the bottom of the ocean. You were taking a deep breath, squat all the way down, holding that breath, and then either exhale on the way up, or even better, wait until you're at the top and then exhale. So to give you an example,
Oh, wow.
okay, so I'll do it as a back squat actually. So taking a really deep breath at the top,
Damn.
that is how you should be breathing when you squat. All
Wow.
right, that is going
Okay.
to,
Got it. Got it.
does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And then similar with a deadlift. Okay, so we're going to step up to the bar, deep breath in.
Oh, at the bottom.
Yeah, you could with a Romanian deadlift, you could do it this way. So with a Romanian deadlift, because we start at the top Again, notice how as I lifted to the top, I still used correct form, because as mentioned,
Which is
a lot of people do this when they Romanian deadlift. They step up and they go, and then they think about their form. But I want you to think about your form before you've even got your hands on the bar. Step up, nice form, lift up. Right. So Romanian deadlift, you can do it the opposite way.
okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So really, really good question there, Wendy. And as you can see, sort of depends on the type of lift you're doing. But in general, you can think of it in terms of hold your breath throughout
Yeah.
the lift and inhale and exhale when you're at the resting part of the lift.
Okay. This will help my asthma as well, I think, because I do struggle with breathing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit harder when you're doing something like a walking lunge where you're kind of going the whole way through, but it helps to at least be thinking about it. But yeah, all that abdominal pressure. By the way, that is why when people are doing really heavy lifts, they'll often use these belts, because think about again using that balloon analogy. If you inflated a
Yeah.
balloon with nothing to restrict it, it's just going to keep expanding and expanding. Whereas if you wrap some tape or wrap some belt around that balloon and started inhaling it, the pressure is going to build up much, much quicker, right? So
Yeah.
that's where lifting belts can come in. If you put this lifting belt around your abdomen, now when you create that pressure in your abdomen, the pressure has something to push against. So when you're doing a very heavy lift, you can brace against that belt, and your abdominal pressure can push against that belt, and it's got something pushing it back. All right.
I see.
Cool. So that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
those
yeah.
lifting belts are for. Cool. By the way, if you want
I
some fancy
see.
terminology, that holding your breath in order to create that intra-abdominal pressure, that's called the Valsalva effect. All right. So there you go. You can impress your mates.
Nice.
Valsalva effect is where you're holding your breath to create that pressure inside your body. Right. So
That's
we've
funny.
looked at
I studied this with the kids with a can as an example.
yeah,
Um,
great.
a full can and an empty can.
Exactly that. Yeah. And when you release the pressure from the can and you flick it and it crumples.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good analogy that. The other couple of things that I want to talk about with deadlifts is just firstly grip. So if you struggle with your grip, which is sometimes the most
Yes,
limiting factor on a deadlift,
it
because
is.
you're lifting many kilos, and your forearms are not as strong as your legs. So this is your normal grip, a normal overhand grip. But you may have noticed the bars can spin. I don't know if you can hear that, but the
I
bar
can.
spins because it's
I
got
see it.
bearings. So if you're
Okay.
trying to hold it with both hands over the top like that, the bar wants to rotate, right? As you pull, it
Mm.
wants to rotate and your fingers want to come off. Similarly, if you hold it with your hands both going that way, it wants to rotate the other way and your fingers want to come off. So if you do what we call a mixed grip, and we go one forward, one back, you can either do it that way, or you can do it that way, or you can alternate. This means that one hand is trying to turn the bar one way, whilst the other hand is trying to turn the bar the other way, and it cancels out. There's a really simple way to improve your grip. You can also use straps. I haven't got any to show you, but maybe that's a conversation for another day.
I've seen
Um,
those actually.
yeah, they really help. They're great. If you're trying to get a PB on a lift, then they can help. I don't think there's any straps in there. Or even just using chalk. So you can use chalk that stops your hands being so slippy. Um, so all those things can help. But it is a good idea every now and then to just try deadlifting without, because it helps to improve your grip strength. And then when you come to do things like pull-ups, it's a bit easier. All right.
Yep.
Also, just be aware there's another type of stance for both squats and deadlifts called the sumo stance. With the sumo stance, because your feet are wider, you are lower, and therefore, when you hit full extension, the bar doesn't move quite as far up. If I bring my legs back together, you see the bar is now
Mm.
higher.
Let's
If
see.
I, all right. So a
Yeah.
sumo squat, because you're not having to move the bar quite as far, it in effect ends up being a little bit easier. And it works slightly different muscles. So a sumo squat is another type of squat, and sorry, sumo deadlift or sumo squat, whichever one is another type. And with this one, again, shins against the bar, but this time hands come to closer rather than with a normal deadlift where your hands are outside your legs. With a sumo deadlift, your legs are outside. All right. And again, you can do it with a mixed grip. And then for a sumo squat, similar thing. Feet a bit wider. I can't go as deep in a sumo squat just because of my physiology. But similar sort of thing, just with wider feet. All right.
Mhm.
Cool. Any other great questions?
No pressure.
Only great ones.
I
Only
think
one.
no silly ones.
No silly ones, exactly.
I
Okay,
think
you
it's
wanted to talk
good
about
fun.
Bulgarian split squats, didn't you?
Yes, please.
Cool. Okay, Bulgarian
I don't
split
have
squat.
any of those.
What, they're not in your
I don't.
program at the
No,
moment?
no, I don't have a bench like that, but I do have a kitchen bench where the kids sit, and that's the one I use.
All right. Yeah. I mean, you can use the edge of your sofa. You can use a coffee table.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
okay, so Bulgarian split squats. A good rule of thumb um, is if you sit on the edge of your bench and you extend your
Mhm.
legs out straight, that's roughly where you want to have your foot. All right. And then your other foot
Oh,
goes up behind.
so you
All right.
straighten it. I see.
Yeah. The thing is, if you don't go exactly there, it's just going to change slightly it's going to slightly change the focus of the movement. So you'll notice, just
Mm-hmm.
going to come around a little bit further, move that away. Um, so you'll notice if I turn sideways, if I go legs out straight from here, now when I do it, you'll notice my knee doesn't go that far forwards. It's kind of roughly in
Yeah.
line with my toes or slightly behind my toes. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Which means most of the flexion is coming from the hip. The knee's not flexing that much, but the hip is. Whereas if I come
Okay.
back a little bit, if I bring that foot slightly further back, now when I do it, the knee goes way further forwards. See, now my knee is
Uh-huh.
past my toes. Do you see that?
Yes. Yeah.
And there's less flexion in the hip. So,
Mm.
little
Got it.
pop quiz here. So the first one, where there was less flexion in my knee, which muscle is being targeted less and which muscle is being targeted more? No pressure.
I don't know the names, Ali. I'm bad with the
You
names.
you know roughly
Um.
what's this one?
Yes.
What's this
Yes.
one?
The top. The top of your. Um. Oh dear. Quads.
Your quads. You got it exactly. So your quads. If my knee is bending less, is it hitting my quads more or less?
Less, no? Oh, more,
You
more,
got
more.
it.
Sorry.
Yeah, bang on. Yeah. So because in the first one where my knee was bending less, that means my quads aren't being loaded as much. But
Loaded.
because my hip is flexing more, that means my glutes are being stretched more. All right. So the first one, when my foot was further out, that's more glutes, less quads. And the second one,
Mhm.
when my knee is bending more, that's more quads, less glutes. All right. So either option's fine. It just depends on what you're trying to hit.
I want to hit more of my glutes. And I found whenever I do this, that my other leg, the one that's on the bench, sometimes helps too much.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah.
that
So
supposed to happen? Or,
so a
or
couple
is
of
it not?
couple of things to think about. Firstly, mindful movement. So mind body connection. So mind muscle connection. If you actually think about where you want to be targeting, and actively avoid using your other leg, then that will help. So what I sometimes try and do is I try and imagine that I've got my foot resting on an egg or something, So I'm trying not to crush the egg with this foot. That way,
Okay.
as I go down, I'm thinking about loading this leg up as much as possible and trying to put as little pressure through my back foot as possible. All right. So that
Yeah.
mind muscle connection really helps. The second thing is the further back you come, so this one where we didn't stand very far away, naturally, when you're here, you're now going to put way more pressure on this foot versus when you're here and you're going to put way more pressure on that leg. Okay, so personally, I prefer the version where you're further out because it puts less pressure on the back foot and it's a little bit more glute focused, which is always a good thing. So that's foot placement. The other thing I want to talk about is which hand to hold the weight in. We have a few different options. So let me just move that back a minute. Okay, so if we stand on this leg, but hold the weight in the opposite hand, this is what we call contralateral, all right? Because this is the working leg and we're holding the weight on the opposite side. So this is what we call contralateral, okay? And when we do this one, it's pretty good for working the outer glute muscles here, because this side is wanting to pull us down, and so this side is having to pull us back up. So contralateral is a really good way to work this glute a little bit more. We then have what's called ipsilateral, which is where we hold it on the same side. So ipsilateral, holding it on the same side, you're going to feel a bit more stable. All right, so this can be a good option if stability is your issue. And then the final option is kind of like bilateral. Bilateral meaning both sides. And when we do it bilaterally, we are obviously able to hold more weight because we're holding it in both hands. So it's not like one is better than the other, but they each have different kind of use cases. So contralateral is going to work a little bit more hip stability. Ipsilateral is not going to demand as much stability, so you may be able to go a bit heavier. And then bilateral, you should be able to load up a bit heavier because you're holding two weights. Any questions about that?
No, and I will stick with the option of being further from the bench and doing it on the other side, holding
Contralateral,
as
nice.
heavy as I can.
Love that. Good stuff. Yeah, great. And it never hurts to mix it up. You don't always have to do exactly the same. You can try different things, and everything is going to train your body for different things. So, right, we only have a couple of minutes left. So, is there anything else? Obviously, we haven't got onto push-ups, but
give me 10.
we can do a quick bit on push-ups, then maybe we'll do this again next week on some other movements. Right, push-ups.
Yeah, I can't do more than 6.
That's okay. I mean, 6 is great. So, common things with push-ups. Firstly, is I see people going way too wide with their hands. Now, I can understand why people do that. That's because as you go wider, it stretches your pec muscle here. And the more it stretches it, the more it kind of loads it up and makes it almost feel easier. It's kind of like when you stretch an elastic band, it feels stronger. Whereas when you relax that elastic band, it doesn't apply as much force. So by going wider, it makes you feel like your pecs are more loaded and don't have to work quite as hard. But the problem with that is it also puts your shoulders in a vulnerable position. So really, when you're in a push-up, I want you to think as if you're in a plank. Because to be honest, that's all a push-up is. It's just a plank where you bend your arms. Just think of a push-up as a plank where you bend your arms. So hands should be directly underneath your shoulders, not out here. And also looking from the side, hands directly under your shoulders, not in front of you, not behind you, just straight underneath. All right, now from here, where a lot of people go wrong, this is the number one thing I see people going wrong, is the first thing they think about is trying to get towards the floor. So from here, they always go, all right, notice how my arms haven't even bent at that point. I feel like I've moved loads because I've gone from up here to down here, but my arms haven't bent even the slightest bit. I'll show you from the front as well. All right, so from here, the first thing people do, they slump, but my elbows are still straight. Once you go into this position, you're going to find it so much harder to go any deeper because now your shoulder blades have gone from a strong position to a weak position, from here to here, and that's just in your shoulder blades. Arm hasn't bent at all.
Mm.
So you have to get out of the idea that you are trying to go down. You're not. What you're trying to do is bend your arms. So you get in your push-up position. You get into that nice strong position where your shoulder blades are forwards, not here, but here. All that's moving there is my shoulder blades, and I'm trying to get them as far forward as possible. All I'm going to think about here is bending the elbows. So the elbows go backwards, and naturally the body is going to come down. Notice how my shoulder blades aren't moving. My shoulder blades stay in the same position. The arms are what bending. I'm not going like this. You will know if you're doing it because you'll feel everything bunching up around here.
Yeah.
As soon as your shoulder blades go back, you'll feel all this tightness up around your neck, around your shoulder blades.
Yeah, I'm trying it now.
Say again?
I'm trying it right now.
You feel the difference?
Oh dear. Yeah, but it's nicer, definitely.
Yeah, so now obviously I'm making that sound easier said than done because you may just not quite have the strength in your arms yet to be able to do it.
I don't.
Which is really common. It's really normal. So you might not have the strength yet to just bend your elbows like that. But what you can do is reduce the amount of weight by shortening the lever. All right. So rather than trying to do it on your toes and doing it badly, you are much better. Can't say much enough times here. You are so much better just getting on your knees and doing it with good form from your knees rather than doing it on your toes and only doing half a push-up. Because that's not even half a push-up. Yeah?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Fantastic.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
Hey, you should not be trying to do push-ups on your toes unless you can go all the way to the floor. That's where your chest touches the floor on your knees. If you are only on your knees coming to here, don't even think about doing it on your toes yet because you're just not gonna get there. Now, a couple of other things that can help is firstly doing them elevated. So if you can do them on your knees, if you're like, yeah, I can do this now, I can do knee push-ups, but then you try and do them on your toes and you can only get to there, come up onto an elevated surface and do them on your toes, but from an elevated surface. And it can be higher than this. You could be using the counter in your kitchen. You could be using a door frame, whatever. If you can't quite make that jump from doing it on your knees, doing it on your toes, elevate the surface. All right. So this is perfectly good. But again, notice how it's the arms bending, not the shoulders going back.
The
all right. And also watch the hips. There's a lot of people as they start to get tired, they might have got their shoulders locked in, but they start to thrust the hips forward. All right. That's why I say don't even think about trying to get to the floor. Just think about bending your elbows. So elevated push-ups, knee push-ups, and then another really nice way to jump from knee push-ups to toe push-ups if you can't quite get back up again, because a lot of people will find they can get down and then they just can't get up again. So try coming down on the toes, then put your knees down, and then come up on the knees, and then back to your toes.
This is what I do actually. I'm much better going down. And then going up is where I really struggle. So I tend to bend my knee then. That's okay, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really common because reason why is because, as we've talked about before, there's sort of 3 parts to a movement. You've got the eccentric, which is where the muscle is lengthening. So here you think your chest muscle and your tricep muscle here. As you come down, chest muscle is stretching, and that tricep muscle is stretching. That's the eccentric part. And that's where your muscle is strongest, is when it's eccentrically lengthening. Then you've got the concentric, which is where the muscle is shortening, and you're not as strong in concentric. So we've come all the way down and we feel really strong. Now we've got to do the concentric part and we're just not as strong. So just make it that little bit easier on that part. And then the isometric part is kind of like holding a plank. So if we held a plank, then that's your core muscle holding isometrically. But if you were to hold an isometric push-up, it would look like this. So the muscles are now working. My chest muscles are working. My triceps are working. My core is working, but they're not getting longer or shorter. They're just staying contracted, and that's your isometric. So So you've got concentric,
Who are you
eccentric.
even talking?
So yeah, so we've got those
That's
three parts,
insane.
and
Okay.
you will always feel
Okay,
strongest
amazing.
on your eccentric. All right. So yeah, well, I'm glad that you've made some progress with you. I thought you said you could already do
Okay.
6.
Good. I just need to strengthen my arms. And
Yeah.
I
So
can do 6, yes.
last thing I'll finish off with then before we go, because what little pop quiz for you again. What would be the most similar dumbbell exercise to a push
Oh,
up?
damn. Is this called you push it up above your head? How do you call that? No, it's not, isn't it?
Let me see if I can. I can't see it. Yeah. So we have. If you
Oh
think
no, sorry.
what we're doing when we do a push up is we're pushing the weight. We're pushing ourselves away from the floor, right? So we're pushing away. So the most similar dumbbell exercise is to. Here we go. Is a bench press. So
The one that we spoke about together, didn't we? Yeah.
yeah, I think so. So if you want to improve your push-ups, get some nice heavy dumbbells, and then starting from that position, we're pushing the floor away. But obviously we're upside down, so we're not pushing the floor, we're pushing the dumbbells. All right. This is
That's the one.
exactly the same movement. And this movement is going to improve your push-ups so much because when you're doing a bench press, you never think about reaching your face forwards or driving your hips
Yeah.
forwards or letting your shoulder blades come back. When you do a bench press, you're thinking about keeping all of this straight and just bending your arms. And that is why it is such a good way to improve your push-ups. Because if you want to improve your push-ups, you have to stop thinking about moving your body. You have to start thinking about moving your arms. So there you go.
If I were to do that on the floor, do I touch the floor with it, or do I
Yeah.
not?
So
That's right.
I'm not
Okay.
a huge, that's what we call a floor press. I'm not a huge fan of a floor press because your range of motion is always going to be limited by your elbows
Yeah.
hitting the floor. So when you do a floor press, you're going to come to here and your elbows are going to hit the
Yeah.
floor. It's not terrible. Like you're only an inch or so, there's only an inch between your chest and your hand, but with a bench press, you can get it all the way to there. So
Yeah.
with a floor
I'll
a floor
start
press
doing
is
that.
not bad. Yeah, so absolutely do a floor press. The other thing you could do is you can always roll up a yoga mat or pile up some cushions and lie on the cushions so that your arms have a little bit more range to go. It's kind of like making a little bench out of cushions.
Ideas, Ali, as always. Amazing.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for rocking up, Wendy. Any questions before we call it day?
Have you had dinner?
No, I think Coralie's cooking us some dinner right now.
Oh, cool. Well, don't be late to that. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, have a wonderful evening, and
thank you.
drop a message in the group chat. In fact, jump on the group chat and post at least one takeaway that you learnt tonight, or as many as you can think of, and make everyone else feel jealous that they weren't here live.
Yeah, I will for sure.
All right, Wendy.
All right. Thank you, Ali.
Have a great evening.
Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.